You are now watching the Conversations on Sinology podcast, where China's past and present meet global curiosity. Join us as we explore Chinese language, literature, history, culture, economy, and ideas that have shaped one of the world's oldest traditions and play a powerful role in shaping today's world. Presented by the Montenegrin Sinology Development Council.
Welcome to Conversations on Sinology. Today's guest is John Rogers, and I promise to keep this introduction brief because I'm genuinely eager for him to tell his own story. John Rogers is an English applied linguist, teacher trainer, and materials writer whose career spans more than 4 decades and multiple education systems across Europe and beyond. He holds a PhD in applied linguistics from the University of Belgrade, and his earlier qualifications include a master's degree in applied linguistics from the University of Edinburgh and extensive teacher training credentials, reflecting a professional life deeply embedded in both theory and classroom practice. But this episode is not primarily about linguistics. It is about John's long and evolving relationship with Tai Chi Chuan, a journey that began in 1970s and eventually led him to intensify study in China, discipleship under Master Zhao Youbing in Xi'an, and the founding of a Tai Chi community in Montenegro. Today, we'll be exploring that story: practice, lineage, discipline, cultural transmission, and what it really means to commit oneself to a tradition. So, John, welcome to the podcast, and let's begin.
Good evening, Elena, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining. So, allow me to ask my first question. What first led you to Tai Chi Chuan, and when did your interest in Tai Chi Chuan begin?
Well, actually, I've been interested in Tai Chi Chuan since I was a teenager, and I think basically for two different reasons. One is that I've always been interested in movement. I like movement. I've always found it rather difficult to sit in one place for extended periods of time. And the second thing is my interest in all things that have something to do with Asia. So I remember as a teenager, I had two books that I valued dearly. One was a teach yourself yoga book, and the other one was about Tai Chi.
Well, that's very interesting. Perfect. I read a little bit about your biography. So, can you tell me what happened in Edinburgh in 1992 that turned your casual interest into sustained practice? Can you tell me a little bit about that period, please?
Sure, yeah. So I was in my late 30s then, a mature student doing a 1 year intensive master's at the University of Edinburgh. The course was very intensive, and on top of that, I had to do various odd jobs in order to finance my studies. So after a few months, really, I was not feeling really very fit, and I realized that I had to do something about it if I wanted to see the end of that course. And well, one day, almost by chance, I was doing some shopping in a supermarket, and on a notice board, I saw an advertisement for evening Tai Chi classes. So I knew what Tai Chi was about, and I said to myself, well, why not give it a try? So uh, I cycled to a fairly distant suburb of Edinburgh one evening, reached an old church building that had been converted into a community center, and was ready to join my Tai Chi class. And the atmosphere was just wonderful. So it was all local people. I was among the youngest at the time, and the atmosphere was very convivial. So during training, during the class, everybody was really present and working hard. And during the breaks, there was conversation around tea and biscuits and things like that. So I found myself in a local community, and I discovered that for the first time, practicing Tai Chi in a group was just wonderful. So I continued to go, and I never missed a class for all the time that I was in Edinburgh.
That is so interesting. That's a very beautiful story, and inevitably that drew you to China, right? In 2011. Where did you go first?
That's right. So after my Scottish episode, so I went back to Hungary where I had been working, and I was able there to start a Tai Chi club, which was part of a global Tai Chi called the Taoist Tai Chi Association. Uh, so I created the Hungarian branch of that association, and well, after a few years, my contract with the British Council in Hungary was well ended,
Mhm.
and I found another job with the same institution in Serbia first, and later in Montenegro. But that meant that once again I was without a Tai Chi community, and I was practicing on my own. And I decided that I had to go to China and to find a Tai Chi teacher there. I suppose this is the same urge that maybe uh, yoga instructors feel after a while, that they practice yoga and they say to themselves, "Hey, one day I have to go to the roots of yoga and things like that." And well, I decided I wanted to go to the cradle of Tai Chi and
Yeah,
find a teacher there.
that's
Um,
perfectly understandable. So,
mm,
but yeah, you had to go to the cradle of that of the Taiji Chuan, and it must have been an extraordinary experience for you. So, what was it like training intensively in China, in Yangshuo and
mm.
later in Xi'an?
I wasn't so my I didn't speak any Chinese at
Mhm.
all, and I knew that you cannot find a teacher that you can relate to immediately. So I had decided beforehand to stay 3 months and to go to visit three different places and work with three different teachers. A Tai Chi friend of mine had recommended Yangshuo because it's a tourist destination, and it's easier for foreigners there because more people speak English. And he recommended a good teacher who was teaching in English, so without the need for an interpreter, and that made things easier as a first comer to China. So teaching in Yangshuo was great, and
Mhm.
I really enjoyed working with that teacher. Um, it was also interesting to be there in winter. It was very cold, and for the first time, I found myself using an electric blanket in Yangshuo because the nights were really cold. After that month, I didn't know where to go next,
Mhm.
and my Yangshuo teacher said, "Well, why don't you go? It's spring. Why don't you go to Xi'an? There's a famous teacher there called Jia Yubin.
Mhm.
So why don't you go there?" I said, so I went to Xi'an. And the interesting bit there is that, again, without any Chinese and without an address or a telephone number, after a few days, I managed to get hold of Master Zhao Yubin through someone that I had met at a sports center by chance. Um, I was lucky that year. Um, First of all, because Master Zhao Yubin
Mhm.
himself was available, and he was also available to teach me one-to-one. His martial arts school, so his Wugwan was not functional at the time, so
Mhm.
most of the teaching was in a park in Xi'an, and but it was a great privilege to be able to work one-to-one with him.
That's very exciting. It must have been a great challenge, both a challenge but also very exciting to finally to go through your Yangshuo teacher to Xi'an and finally find Master Zhao Youbing by yourself. without speaking the language and everything. I cannot imagine. But and your connection with Master Zhao Yobing is truly a fascinating story. Every part of your story related to China and Taiji Chuan is fascinating, but especially this connection is drawing my attention with Master Zhao Yobing because especially in light of his status of, we can really say, a celebrity in China in the world of martial arts, as he is a fifth generation descendant in the Yang style Taiji family lineage with many titles in the world of sports and Taiji Chuan. In addition, if I'm correct, the Chinese government has awarded him the prestigious title of National Wushu Duanwei Level 8. That's what we discovered during his visit to Montenegro. This is what I know. It must be a great privilege for you. So in 2012, you completed formal accreditations, became a certified overseas instructor with the largest collective of independent Taiji Chuan instructions in the UK, the Taiji Union for Great Britain, which is extraordinary. And you were subsequently accredited by the Chinese Wushu Association in 2013. That is quite an achievement, Sean. So how did you go about establishing the Taiji club, actually Xishan Yangzhao Taiji Chuan俱乐部in Montenegro? What challenges come with transmitting a Chinese body and mind practice in a European context?
There are two kinds of challenges. On the one hand, you have some material difficulties that in order to practice Tai Chi, you need a venue, and the venue needs to be relatively large because you're always moving around, you're always stepping in Tai Chi. So that's been relatively difficult to organize. And apart from those practical considerations, there's also the fact that compared to yoga, for example, Tai Chi was not, I don't think completely new in Montenegro, but it was relatively new. So some people had heard about it, some people interested in the martial arts, or people interested in other body practices. But other than that, it was quite unknown.
So it's truly an honor for the club in Montenegro to carry this name of Grandmaster Zhao and the Yang style school of Taiji Chuan. I attended the lecture and I, of course, remember seeing you there when Grandmaster Zhao Yobing visited Montenegro. And as you remember, he organized the event under the auspices of the Confucius Institute at the University of Montenegro. And it was in June 2019 at the Chedi Lustitsa Bay in Tivat. So we all had the opportunity to learn more about the Chinese cultural heritage, the concept of yin and yang, and its connection to the Chinese medicine, as well as the many benefits of Taiji Chuan for physical and mental health. And for all of us, that was a special occasion. So, do you know anything about Master Zhao Yobing's impressions of Montenegro after that visit or during that visit? Do you know anything about it?
Yes, I think it was mostly, oh, it was only, as far as I know, it was only positive impressions. Well, of course, to start off with, he was happy to see that our club, even though it was so small compared to Tai Chi schools in China, our
Yes.
club was still existing and had attracted, quite a considerable number of people over the years. So that was really good. Um, Other than that, it was, I think, really well taken care of by his hosts,
Mhm.
partly by the Confucius Institute and partly by our club. I remember one occasion when we took him to the bridge over the Tara River, and that
Yes,
was a very special
the
day
famous
because
bridge. Yes.
yes, yeah, most Chinese people see through an old film seem to have heard about that bridge. So that was a very memorable excursion, and we all ended up singing Bella Ciao together.
I can imagine. That's a beautiful story. Thank you. That's
Uh,
so nice to hear. I'm both happy and proud to hear that. Yes, this must have been quite a moment. So let's talk about for a little bit about your third visit to China because it's truly a special one, and you will tell me why. So what changed during your third visit, and what were you looking for this time, and
hmm.
did you find it?
So that was in 2013, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, one difference then is that I knew where I was going, so I was no longer looking around for a teacher. I
Mhm.
had found Master Jia Yobin, and I decided then that he would be my teacher.
Yeah.
So that was certainly a big difference, and also, so that was my second visit to Xi'an. So in that respect, I also knew where I was going. So I was beginning to feel at home there. That was
Mhm.
making things easier.
So yes, what was special about 2013 is in October, I was invited to join the group
Mhm.
to a city in Shandong province for what I was told was going to be a large Tai Chi event. But it's only when I was already there after a couple of days that I realized it was going to be an intensive trainer certification course organized by the Chinese Wushu Association. So that's what I had enrolled in, and it was all great. It was the training itself was not very different from what it was in
Mhm.
Xi'an. It was just as intensive. Just the atmosphere was different. There were a lot more people from not only from all over China, but also from other parts of the world, and everybody was excited because competition day was approaching, certification day, and things. Um, so that was quite an adventure,
I can
and
imagine.
it's during those 10 days that other students, other people from Master Zhao's uh, school just asked me, John, have you ever considered becoming a disciple of Master Zhao?
Mhm.
Why don't you ask him? I think
Mhm.
he would be happy if you just asked him. There's nothing, you know. And of course, I had no intention. That was not part of my plan. If you want to become a disciple, I was happy just to get all the training that I could. But I said to myself, well, why not? Let's ask him. And indeed,
Absolutely.
Master Jia was really pleased. After a few days, he let me know that he would accept me as a disciple,
Mhm.
and that he was already beginning to arrange the ceremony in Xi'an
Mhm.
at the end of October. So he was already busy organizing the discipleship ceremony because he knew that I was coming back to Montenegro at the end of October.
So this is how this is very exciting for me to listen, and I'm sure for all the viewers. And this is actually how your relationship with Master Zhao Yao being developed into formal discipleship. So can you tell me what does becoming a disciple, 2D, actually mean in the Chinese martial tradition?
Um, I think for uh, Western people, it's important to highlight the fact that in where the word used in English is disciple, we talk of
Mhm.
disciples and discipleship, but it has so this can have religious connotations in a Western context, but in China, as far as I know, it has none of those connotations. So when you become a disciple of a master, you commit yourself uh, to become a regular student, and if you want, you join a Tai Chi family.
Mhm. Mhm.
So the your teacher, instead of being just a teacher, just an instructor, becomes more like a father. And all the other students who are part of the same school, they're not just other students, they become your brothers and sisters, and you
Oh, I see.
address each other
I see.
using those terms.
I see. That's very
And
beautiful.
and also as a disciple, you commit yourself to being a good, well, a good committed practitioner. So you should take care of your own practice, and also try to make to make your master's Tai Chi style better known in the world outside.
And you did. You managed to do that. You managed to do this in our
Well,
in our country. It is so special.
to a modest extent, yeah.
But over the time your training with Master Zhao Youbing led you to developing a strong connection to with the city of Xi'an, one of ancient capitals of China, also sister city of Kotor. I have this famous landmark of the bell tower, the drum tower of Xi'an as a background, especially for this episode. So I suppose that you visited Xi'an quite often. So what was it like? Was there a special visit that stands out?
Well, to start off with, I want to say that I really love the city of Xi'an, and it has become like a second home to me. I'm always excited about going back. It's so different when you go back to a place, and in the morning you're looking at those street food places to have your breakfast, and you realize that one of the owners recognizes you, smiles at you, and say, "Oh, you're back." And that's a very special feeling. And also on a practical side, when you use the metro, and then to get out, you know which exit you take. So in Xi'an, I know exactly where I should get out. And so I feel those are little things that make me feel at home there.
Mm-hmm.
I think this year was my 10th visit, actually. What happened last year was also very special, because for the first time, I was not traveling alone, and the two instructors that I had trained had expressed interest in joining me and visiting Master Zhao's school. So we went there together, and we took part in a Tai Chi competition in the city of Weinan together.
Wonderful.
Mm.
So I would say that you were exceptionally fortunate to visit Xi'an, reading your biography and everything during such meaningful occasions that, like experiencing China firsthand during major cultural events such as your last visit, coinciding with the Chinese New Year celebrations. And you also honored the tradition by paying respects at the local cemetery where young Lu Chang and other distinguished members of his family are buried, connecting deeply to another facet of Chinese heritage. And you underwent the formal process of being accepted as a disciple by a Tai Chi Chuan master, Zhao Youbing, including the ceremonial acceptance, immersing yourself fully in the living heart of Tai Chi tradition. As a foreigner, this combination of first-hand cultural experiences, participation, and direct transmission of knowledge gives you an understanding of China that goes far beyond Tai Chi itself. It makes you actually a bridge between cultures with a very rare and deeply embodied insight into Chinese history, philosophy, and tradition. So this is yet another link, in my eyes, between Montenegro and Xi'an. As I mentioned, it's the sister city of Kotor. And I've had the opportunity to visit Xi'an twice, but in a very official setting and during events tied to the bilateral cooperation between the cities. So your experience is very different. You have lived, trained, and experienced the culture as a local, which makes it all the more fascinating. So thank you for sharing that story and for expanding my own understanding of Xi'an. So, lastly, what does Tai Chi mean to you? Are we talking about survival or truly living?
Well, of course, it is possible to live. It would be possible to live without practicing Tai Chi, but then the question that follows immediately is, what sort of life would that be?
Yeah.
So at this stage, after 30 odd years of practice, I cannot really imagine not practicing Tai Chi anymore. It's become an essential part of my life. It's something that gives some sort of structure to my life. So it helps me. I feel that it's helping me both mentally and physically, and also because of my total involvement in it. It's something that I always feel like sharing with other people.
And
So
that's very beautifully put. So what was the biggest discovery for you about Tai Chi Chuan? And is there another dimension to it?
One discovery about Tai Chi Chuan, I think something that most practitioners discover after a while, is that you've never finished. You're never there. So it's Tai Chi is a journey, and it's always possible to. So it's something to do with self-cultivation in many ways. It's something that enables you to become the best practitioner that you can possibly be for yourself. So not better than someone else, but better than what you were yesterday or last year. So there's that feeling that there's always, it's not just a feeling, it's a fact actually, that you're always discovering new dimension about Tai Chi, because the more you practice, the more your body changes and your attitude changes, and that enables you to go deeper into your Tai Chi. So your Tai Chi evolves with the way your body evolves, in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's so beautifully said, and thank you. And I would say that there is also a subtle but important philosophical thread running throughout this episode. Tai Chi, as you articulate, it is about alignment of body and mind, of intention and action, self and community. The paradox at its heart is that the relaxation requires discipline and letting go requires structure, if I got it right. So John, thank you once again for sharing your inspiring journey with me, and I hope that in the future there will be an opportunity for us to cooperate with Yangzhou Tai Chi Chuan Club Montenegro, or perhaps to initiate some events together with the Montenegrin Sinology Development Council in Kotor. And I really look forward to hearing even more fascinating stories from your Tai Chi journey. So thank you once again.
Thank you so much for your invitation, and it's wonderful to be able to share one's interest in Tai Chi and one's love of Xi'an with someone else. Thank you, Yelena.
You're always welcome, and until next time, have a good
Until
evening.
next time.
Goodbye.
That would be wonderful. Yes, absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye for now.